Let's just talk just real quickly before we wrap up. One of the questions we often get asked is, have we already lost the momentum of 2020? You had mentioned, I think, before about how if we don't seize the moment, we're going to lose it. And many people would say we've already lost it. Have we, Dr. Cosby?
Well, again, I think that the critical race theorist and Derek Bell are accurate, that there will be peaks of hope that will revert back to the norm of white domination. I would, however, say, and that I can't emphasize how we must challenge government to do right by black people. And that in the last years of his life, and I'm quoting verbatim Dr. Martin Luther King, he says, unless there is a radical redistribution of the wealth so that those who built the country can truly be citizens. The myth that many black people have, and whites also, is that whites became so wealthy through their own agency and by pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps. White people became, the white middle class was assisted by public policies of the New Deal, of Roosevelt, the Fair Deal of Truman, the Homeowners Loan Corporation redlined every neighborhood in America. All you have to do is just go online, pull up and say, redline Louisville, redline Cincinnati. They've mapped it out. This has been socially engineered, where white people got monetized and we got ghettoized. The federal government created this mess. And unless we talk about repair, if you steal my car on Monday and you get saved on Tuesday, and you're still driving my car on Wednesday, you were not saved on Tuesday. The sign that you were saved on Tuesday if you stole my car on Monday is not that you simply bring it back on Wednesday, but you bring it back full of gas with a tune-up and cleaned up. And that's the Zacchaeus model. Zacchaeus said, if I have defrauded you, a half of my goods will I give to the poor, which has to do with just public policy. But if I've defrauded you, I will pay you back fourfold. And until we push, because the fact of the matter is, I'm a pastor in the hood. I'm an HBCU president. It was a black church that brought back the last HBCU in American history. A black church did that. And it has never happened before in American history. I have a gymnasium in the poorest, I'm the first to build a gymnasium, co-ops, businesses, in the hood. I've been doing this for 42 years. I have never seen the black community like it is right now. The churches are closing because the poor have been concentrated in, there's concentrated poverty. And if you're saying, well, the churches can do it, and they should do it. But poor people in poor neighborhoods are bringing to church not tithes, but tips, because they don't have the resources to keep these institutions open, because you had, first of all, JJ, who lived in the hood, right next to the Jeffersons, the Evans lived next to the Jeffersons in the hood together. That was the 50s and the 60s. But then with open housing, the Jeffersons left JJ, moved on up to the east side, left poor black people, and then got a little higher and went up to Bill Cosby and the Huxtables. And JJ and the Evans are still living in urban neighborhoods without any institutions and no hope.
They tore the projects down.
Yeah, and gentrified it. And gentrification,
Turn them into condos.
gentrification is like fornication. Somebody's getting screwed, and black people are the ones.
Pick up on that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we can't dismiss the role of government connivance in creating all of this. I think we could add to that list, Dr. Cosby, the GI Bill.
Right.
That was one of the greatest factors encouraging the creation of the present-day white middle class. And African Americans were systematically denied the home ownership and the educational benefits after the Second World War of the GI Bill. We can mention the looting of the Freedman's Bank at the very beginning, when the bank that was created to empower black folks and recently freed slaves was looted, and all that money went into the wrong pockets. So there's definitely a role that has to be played by responsible government. I think it's critically important for us to understand that a lot of what is happening now is the result of a certain mentality. When you have a growing list of Congress folks and senators who are reading Ayn Rand and believe in altruism is a vice, not a virtue, there has to be a pushback in terms of creating a consciousness amongst the public that's more amenable to a charitable government, a just and fair, forget charity, a just and fair government. And so I think it goes back to what Dr. Douglas was saying, just working at many different levels, working and advocating for government policies that are more just and fair and dealing with poor folks who provide a lot of that wealth through disproportionate taxation systems. We have to be working to create a political culture that is sending people into the halls of power that have a different mentality from those currently occupying many of those offices. And we also have to be grooming our own people to go into Congress. And to have more than just the squad up there, but to have the whole crew up there. And I think we can start thinking strategically how we can do that. And in the race against gerrymandering and voter suppression and all the other mechanisms that are being put into place to create white minority rule. And so the window's open, but I think we have to have a multifaceted, multi-tier strategy to approach it.
Right.
Yeah, Dean Douglas, can you pick up on that because you intimated that earlier?
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you both for your insights. Look, to pick up from that and your question, have we lost the momentum for change? Look, I think that our country is at a crossroads. And we have to decide what kind of nation we want to be. Our country is a country that has long had, if you will, a warring soul, to borrow from W.E.B. Du Bois' construct, of which he spoke of in 1903. We've been a nation that, on the one hand, was founded to be this quote-unquote city on the hill, exemplary of American exceptionalism, which has always been synonymous with Anglo-Saxon exceptionalism, read whiteness. It was founded to reflect Anglo-Saxon virtue and exceptionality, which means that it has always been a raced nation. That is to say, that race has always been that construct that has determined who is or who is not to be accepted as an American citizen. And as it has been that, it has been a nation that has never lived into what it's meant to be a democracy. On the other hand, this nation has given birth to a vision, right, of being a nation where all people can pursue life, liberty, and happiness, a nation where there is freedom and justice for all. This nation has always been a nation that has had this kind of warring soul and has had to decide what kind of nation it is going to be. It has found itself at these crisis moments in various times throughout our history, not the least of which has been the Civil War. We are at another Civil War moment. And this nation is at an intersection and at a time of crises. And we've got to make a decision about what kind of nation we're going to be, and we've got to have the kind of moral leaders and moral voices that are going to push us toward our, to borrow Abraham Lincoln's language, toward our better angels. That's where faith leaders come in. If not, we are going to truly find ourselves a divided nation reflective of the kind of division that was indeed the Civil War. We are at that moment. And so, indeed, you ask whether or not we have lost the moment, the opportunity. This is the moment. This is a moment of decision. This is a moment of crisis. Crisis is always also means a moment of opportunity. And so, indeed, we have to muster our voices, our moral courage, our moral imagination, build the kind of solidarities with people who find themselves on the underside of this democratic project, to begin to seize the kind of power and the kind of voices and not be afraid to speak the truth and to challenge these voices who want to take us back to this MAGA vision. As opposed to living in to our better angels. So all I can say at this point is that we are at a crisis moment. We are at a time of decision, and our faith communities, our faith leaders must be the ones in taking the lead in bringing us toward a different kind of reality and mustering the moral voice, the moral courage to indeed push this nation toward its better angels, or because, believe you me, in the direction that we are going, we will have not simply lost the momentum, as you put it, we will have lost our democracy. We will have succumbed and lost the vision and the aspiration to become indeed a society in which there is indeed justice for all.
Yes.
I think we're all in agreement with what Dr. Douglas mentioned. One thing in answering that question specifically that we must do if we're going to not be deluded into thinking we've lost the momentum, we have to divorce our emotions from the news cycle. You know, when did Black Lives Matter enter into the national consciousness in a big way? The 2016 election. Remember the mic being snatched from Bernie Sanders' hand, Hillary being cornered, and all of the other things. And then after the election was over, and one side could say, you know, black folks, you know, you got to rally with us, as Mr. Biden said. If you're not to Charlemagne, right? If you're not a Democrat, you're not really black. And the other side can say, look, these scary black people, if you don't help us to become the law and order administration, they're going to take over and invade your neighborhood. And then it disappeared until 2020. And then it's all over the media. And so we're all riled up. And, you know, the tragedies culminated with the tragic killing of George Floyd, and not tragic, just the sadistic, pornographic lynching of Mr. Floyd. But believe me, the George Floyds and Breonna Taylors and Ahmaud Arbery's and John Crawford's and Philando Castiles and the Alden Sterlings, and they don't just get killed during election years. It's an ongoing crisis. And so we can't get riled up during an election year because all of this publicity and all of this action is taking place, and then as soon as it disappears from the media, the momentum goes out like a deflated balloon. So we have to begin to work and condition ourselves not to believe that because an election year passes and all of that televised activity of Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Don't Matter, for that matter, are invading our consciousness via the media, and then when the deal is done and they pack up and the cameras turn off, you know, the killings don't stop on the one hand, and the organizing and struggle doesn't stop on the other hand. So I think if we can look beyond the news cycle, especially during these election years and these election year blow-ups, and believe me, 2024, when that comes, you ain't seen nothing yet. And so we have to begin now to prepare for that in terms of how we're going to organize, how we're going to respond, how we're going to develop strategies to interject our thoughts and ideas and programs into the media narrated discussion in creative ways. So the perception in the minds of many that we've lost momentum is simply created by the fact that, as Gil Scott-Heron once famously said, the revolution will not be televised. And because it's not televised, we go to sleep.
Right.
Mary,
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Cosby.
You know, Dr. King's last book that he wrote in 1967, you know, basically is a paraphrase of the question you asked. Mm-hmm. Where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. Chaos or community? And in the book, he gives a blueprint in which he says, unless the federal government has the will to create just policies. He is assassinated April the 4th, 1968. 1 month prior to his assassination, the Kerner Commission issues out its report. Otto Kerner, former governor of Illinois, Johnson tags him to answer the question, why did the riots take place in Newark and Detroit? And they convene a conservative group of people. And they come back after studying urban areas and say this: one, we have two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. And then it goes on to say on the very first page of the Kerner report is that what black people cannot forget and the white people do not know is that white people have created the ghetto, they sustain the ghetto, and they tolerate the ghetto. And then it gives strategies on how we can intervene. Dr. King reads the report in March of 1968, 3 weeks before his assassination, and he says, and I quote, that this is a doctor giving a nation a bad medical report with a sure remedy. Mm. And the remedy he was referring to was public policy. We like to talk about personal policies. That's white evangelicalism, without talking about the impact that public policies have on personal policies. So according to Stuart Burns' book on Montgomery, Stuart Burns says that Dr. King, during the Montgomery bus boycott, was told by a white man, you need to go back to your pulpit and just preach the gospel. And Dr. King responded, I can't tell black kids don't steal when we are creating the conditions in our society that makes them steal. Mm-hmm. And Coretta King, who in my opinion was probably more brilliant than Martin, but does not get the credit, said, poor schools is violence. Mm-hmm. Food deserts are violence. Don't talk about why black kids are being violent if you're not going to talk about the conditions in this city, state, and nation that is creating the violence for black kids.
Well, certainly the discussion could go on, and this is just a starting point. And I'll remind you that it's not just 2024 that's a major election, but Kentucky has a major election in 2022 and 2023. You just don't vote every 4 years, you vote every year, every time. Thank you, Dean Douglas. Thank you so much, Mr. Shakir, Dr. Cosby. It's been a pleasure to be in the midst and to learn from you tonight.